Hi, this is Stephen Cockcroft. Thanks for watching this video. I'm recording the audio track here in my home today, where there are others moving about the house. So there might be some background noise. It might give the video a bit of a homely ambience, but hopefully it won't be distracting. It's quite windy here today, so you might hear a bit of white noise in the background of this recording because of that. It's been a while since I made my actual welcome video to the stephencockcroft.com website, and I found that I now have some other things to say, hence this new video. Note that I'll be talking quite quickly in order to keep things moving along. If you missed something, I suggest you go back and listen to or watch that part of the video again. The purpose of this video is to give you a broad overview of the philosophy or the view of reality that underpins the writings and teachings here at stephencockcroft.com. There is yet another video that can be found below this one on the right hand column of the site's homepage called Navigating the Site, which is like a mini tour to help you find your way around the website. But back to our current video. Here we go with an overview of the philosophy or the view of reality that underpins the writings and teachings here at stephencockcroft.com. I want to keep this as clear and to the point as possible. To an extent, I also cover the subject under two different headings that you can find in the menu at the top of the homepage. Those headings are the new paradigm, the new way, and idealism. The articles you're presented with there are a little long, however, and I want this video to be more succinct. Firstly, stephencockcroft.com and its associated resources are focused on a generic non-dogmatic spirituality, the meaning of life, the nature of reality, our own true nature, and how we can become enlightened. My teachings and writings aren't based on some theory or view of reality that I've simply made up because it sounds good. Neither are all of the ideas my own, but more importantly, I do boldly make the claim that the view of reality that I present and write about is entirely non-dogmatic and is completely based on logic and reasoned argument. I invite you to hold me to that. I am unapologetically bold in my claims because I know the logic holds up. So getting to the particular view of reality that we're interested in here at stephencockcroft.com. To start with, the way society typically conditions us to believe the way reality is incorrect. Most people see reality in either of two ways, and sometimes people switch between these two views. The first incorrect view is that reality is made up of two main broad things or substances, the physical and the non-physical. You know what the physical is. What about the non-physical? Well, the non-physical is things like minds, thoughts, ideas, emotions, consciousness, and awareness. Essentially, they are things that aren't made of matter or aren't physical. This view that reality is made of two substances is called dualism, and it is the view that these two substances, the physical and the non-physical, interact with each other and cooperate with each other in order to make reality what it is. The other incorrect view of reality is called materialism, which also goes by the other name physicalism. This is the view of existence that claims reality began only with matter and matter is all that is real, and that non-physical things like minds and thoughts and consciousness come out of matter because the matter is arranged in such a special way that it creates an illusion of the experience of consciousness and other non-physical things. Now, as I've said, both these views are incorrect and they are also illogical. I discuss why this is so in a lot of my writings. Unfortunately, I haven't got time to go into it in this video really. But briefly, for those who really want an answer now, consider this. Dualism claims that the physical and the non-physical interact with each other. But they're also saying that these substances are complete opposites on the fundamental level of reality. Listen to those words, physical and non-physical. They really are opposite things that are meant to both be fundamental to reality, according to dualism. So think about it. They couldn't possibly interact when they are such absolute opposites. They would have nothing in common. So dualism can't be true. Materialism argues that the physical is real and consciousness or the non-physical arises out of matter as an illusion. But how can something that is the opposite of fundamental reality arise from fundamental reality even as an illusion? It couldn't. What would the illusion be an illusion of if the experience of the non-physical is absolutely nothing like the physical? If all there really is matter, and the illusion of the non-physical is nothing like matter, there is nothing else for the non-physical to be an illusion of. An illusion always resembles something real in some way or some ways. So materialism or physicalism can't be true. The view of reality I believe is correct is called idealism. Note there are different types of idealism, and I don't advocate them all. I promote a type of idealism. I choose to call it the new paradigm or the new way. However, what we call it isn't as important as what it's like. Idealism turns a lot of people's view of reality upside down. Are you ready for that? The correct view of reality is that existence is actually solely non-physical. So reality is made of non-physical things like consciousness or awareness, which in turn is made up of things like minds, thoughts, ideas, emotions, feelings, and experiences. What then about the physical? Well, clearly we can't say the physical doesn't exist at all, as we encounter it all the time. But with idealism, the physical or matter arises out of the non-physical or consciousness. Perhaps in our current age, the best comparison we can make to help illustrate this is a computerized virtual reality computer game or environment. For those not familiar with the concept of virtual reality or a computer simulation, imagine yourself being immersed in a 3D computer game or a 3D movie in which your mind feels like it is in a make-believe computerized virtual body, and you can walk about and do things in that world, talk to people, pick the leaves from the trees, talk to others, etc. So that is kind of what an idealist view of the physical world or physical reality is like. Let's go back to an actual computer game for a moment. In an actual computer game, there are trees and buildings and other people in the virtual computerized world. But we know, of course, that those things aren't real trees and people, they just look like trees and people and seem to behave like them. We know that they're actually made of computer language and information. They are really abstract information and data that give instructions to present images of things like trees and people on a screen or onto some virtual reality headset. Now let's go back to the view of our own reality according to idealism. Similarly, our reality, our everyday life, also involves things like trees and buildings and people. And idealism argues that these physical things are also made of non-physical stuff. Not computer language, like with a computer simulation, but rather in real life, the non-physical stuff, trees and buildings and so on, are made of thoughts, ideas, experiences, feelings, awareness and consciousness. For example, if you see a tree, the tree actually exists as an idea and experience in your mind. And with idealism, the entire physical world arises from consciousness or the non-physical as such physical ideas and systems of ideas and experiences. And idealism is saying that physical things exist only as that, only as ideas and non-physical experiences in and of consciousness. But I need to quickly point out here that I'm not saying that other people or animals don't exist. Other people and beings also exist as conscious experiencing beings. It is their bodies that exist only as ideas and systems of ideas that arise from consciousness. If you're not used to thinking about the world or reality in this way, I realize that it can take a bit of getting used to it first. However, keep in mind that today there are a number of philosophers and physicists and other scientists that take this kind of view of reality entirely seriously. In my The New Paradigm or The New Way theory of reality, my idealist approach sees non-physical consciousness as the one fundamental substance that makes up all of reality. Why one substance? Philosophers know that existence must ultimately be made of one substance, or ultimately be one thing. Remember the problem we found with trying to have two fundamental substances with dualism? It can't work. Do you also remember how the idea of materialism, whether physical or matter, was the only one real substance didn't work either? And as there are only two possible substances we observe to make up reality, the physical and the non-physical, the process of elimination tells us the only one substance left to form reality is the non-physical, or non-physical consciousness. Why consciousness? Well, the most fundamental or basic of non-physical things is consciousness or awareness. Everything else, non-physical, arises from consciousness or awareness. So, non-physical consciousness alone is fundamental to reality. Consciousness is in fact what reality is, because everything else comes out of or from consciousness. Let's explore consciousness some more. Fundamental consciousness is the one thing that makes up, or is, the sum of reality. Reality is one thing. It is consciousness. It is also infinite. Why is that? Consciousness or awareness, being fundamental to reality, is a necessity for anything else to exist. This also means that consciousness is all that is needed for anything else to exist. And this further means that there is nothing else that exists or does not exist that could limit consciousness. Does that make sense? I'll put it another way. If everything else that exists comes from fundamental consciousness, and is thus dependent on fundamental consciousness for its existence, nothing else that exists besides consciousness could limit consciousness. It is consciousness that is all-powerful. All the other things are merely subject to consciousness, and thus, if there is nothing else in existence that can limit or restrict or hold back fundamental consciousness, then fundamental consciousness must be infinite. We'll continue to explore consciousness some more. What exactly is consciousness? Consciousness is awareness or the experience of being aware. We are consciousness. We are awareness ourselves. We are the experience of being aware. Animals are conscious. They too are consciousness. An important thing to grasp here is that, as I've already said, ultimately there is one fundamental consciousness that is reality. As there is only one fundamental consciousness, we are each that fundamental consciousness. We each come from that one fundamental consciousness, and so we are that fundamental consciousness. It's true that we are each an individualized consciousness that arises from the fundamental consciousness, but we are each at the same time still that one fundamental infinite consciousness. And as individual consciousnesses, we are each currently having a particular experience of consciousness, or a particular conscious experience as we go about our lives here on earth. It's so important to grasp that I'll repeat it. While we are each individualized consciousnesses, we are each simultaneously fundamental consciousness itself. You and I personally are each that fundamental consciousness, each respectively having our particular experience. To finish this part of the video, I just want to touch on what each of us being fundamental consciousness means about us. What is this fundamental consciousness like? What is true reality itself actually like? Because fundamental consciousness is existence, or is all that exists, as I've said, it has no limitations on it. Again, this is another important thing to grasp. Just imagine if something or someone, or you, for that matter, has nothing limiting it, or nothing limiting you. You have no limitations. You could have or be anything you wanted. It is completely free. You are completely free and empowered. You can do anything. That is the nature of reality that is fundamental consciousness, and that is us. Another word for this kind of absolute freedom is self-determination. Fundamental consciousness is self-determining. It can choose to be whatever it wants. There is nothing limiting what it can be. It is infinite in every way, in every sense. I argue it is logical that such an entity in such a circumstance would choose to be that thing that is most empowered, most loving, and most free. In other words, it would choose to be infinite love, infinite empowerment, and infinite freedom. To conclude this part of the video, we have been told a lie by the system. We have been told reality is just meaningless matter, and consciousness has arisen as an illusion due to some cosmic accident. We have been told that we're born and we die and that is it. We've been told that life is innately meaningless, that we're alone in this universe and that we don't really fit due to being a cosmic anomaly. But this has all been a lie. Rather, each of us are infinite consciousness, having an experience here on earth. We are part of an existence that is fundamentally infinite love, infinite freedom, and infinite empowerment. Remember that fundamental consciousness is fundamental. It is the basis of everything. It is everything. Time and space and the physical arise from fundamental consciousness. So while we do experience the virtual physical realm, our being is also rooted in fundamental consciousness, which is outside of time, outside of space, outside of the material world. Things like time and physicality and space are just experiences we are having as fundamental consciousness that exists outside of time and space and physicality. Thus, the fundamental nature of each of our individual consciousnesses is infinite. We are a reality that is infinite love, infinite empowerment, and infinite freedom. That is our own nature. That is the true nature of ourselves and of reality as a whole. You might be wondering, if existence is infinite love, infinite empowerment, and infinite freedom, why then does the world have so many problems and issues? My belief is that the world is in an awakening state. That's to say that we are waking up to who we really are, waking up to what reality actually is. I invite you to imagine the analogy of a world where people are walking around half asleep. They are not fully awake, so their vision is somewhat blurred and their minds aren't functioning properly. They're not seeing properly or thinking properly. This is how I see our own current world. People are going about not properly awakened, not enlightened as to who we really are and what reality actually is. StephenCockcroft.com and its associated materials are primarily about exploring the new paradigm or the new way as a type of idealism in a more thorough way. We explore further as to what this view of reality is about and what it means for our everyday lives. Finally, before I end this video, I should explicitly state that StephenCockcroft.com is not a cult. The intention is not to tell anyone what they should think or believe. What people choose to believe is entirely up to the individuals themselves, of course. And as I've also said, when it comes to the core content of my teachings, I support all my claims on the new paradigm with sound logic and reasoning, and I invite everyone to hold me to that, whilst also expecting others to be fair and open-minded themselves with their criticisms. You've reached the end of the video. Thanks again so much for watching. Feel free to watch it over again, even multiple times, if you couldn't take everything in the first time. I realise it's quite long, however, there's quite a lot of information in it, and I think it does quite a good job of covering the key philosophies dealt with here at StephenCockcroft.com. If this is your first visit to the site, I suggest you bookmark the site and go on to have a good explore of the content that's presented here. This is Stephen Cockcroft, wishing you the very best.